Welcome to the third flame of Acts, sharing resources. In Acts 4-5, believers hold possessions in common so that no one is in need, though Ananias and Sapphira reveal the dangers of dishonesty. The theme of generosity and honesty continues when Antioch sends famine relief to Jerusalem in Acts 11, and when Paul in Acts 20 reminds leaders that it is more blessed to give than to receive. A church on fire practices economic justice, generosity, and solidarity across communities.
Come wind and fire, with spirit higher, help us to love as God above.
When the Spirit fell in Acts, it didn't just make people speak in tongues. It didn't just give us one more story of miracles. No, it lit a fire under people's wallets. And in the Roman world, that was shocking. Because when the Spirit shows up, money changes hands, power changes shape, and suddenly the poor are not supposed to stay poor anymore. That's not just charity, that's revolution. Let's set the stage. The Roman economy was built like a pyramid scheme. At the top, the senators, the equestrians, the local elites, about 2% of the population. At the bottom, everyone else, farming little plots, hauling nets, or working with calloused hands. Richard Horsley calls this the double squeeze. Rome took tribute, local elites took rents, and when you added temple tithes on top, people were squeezed dry. Josephus says peasants lost 25 to 30% of their fragile income before they even started eating. One drought, one illness, and you were begging at the gate. Meanwhile, the elites had it figured out. Shift taxes down the chain, collect a little extra, call it management. Tacitus, a Roman himself, admitted it. Taxation drove unrest everywhere. Philo in Alexandria said Jewish communities paid double, both Rome and the temple, and got harassed for it anyway. And into that system comes a little community in Jerusalem daring to say there was not a needy person among them. Acts 4:34. Friends, that was not piety. That was defiance. In Acts 4, believers sold land and houses, laid it all at the apostles' feet, and redistributed it so nobody went without. Rome said, scarcity is normal. The church said, not here, not now, not among us. And then Acts 5 drops the story of Ananias and Sapphira. Harsh? Yes. But think about it. In a world obsessed with honor and appearances, they wanted to look generous while secretly keeping their cut. They wanted the status of Barnabas without the sacrifice. N.T. Wright points out that the Spirit struck at the core issue, honesty. If generosity turns into performance, it collapses back into the old Roman game of honor. The Spirit wasn't having it. Today, doesn't that sting a little? We live in a culture of performative generosity, billionaire foundations that protect privilege, corporations posting hashtags while underpaying workers. Acts reminds us, generosity is not a PR strategy, it's fire. Now we hit the famine under Claudius. Josephus confirms it. Food was short, hunger everywhere. Rome handled famines the old way. The elites brought in grain, handed it out, and looked like heroes. That's what Queen Helena of Adiabene did, importing grain from Egypt, patronage as usual. But the Antioch church, they flipped the script. Gentiles took up a collection for Jews in Jerusalem. This wasn't just food aid, this was solidarity across ethnicity, geography, and culture. Peter Leithart says it echoed Joseph in Genesis. Once Egypt fed Israel, now the nations feed Israel. Horsley and Silberman sharpen it further. This wasn't charity, it was a counter-economy. Bread flowing sideways, not top-down. An economy built on kinship, not control. Today, imagine if suburban megachurches funneled resources into rural or inner-city congregations until no one went hungry. Imagine if the global church said, your famine is ours, and backed it up with bread. That's Antioch fire. Finally, Paul's farewell at Miletus. He reminds them, I coveted no one's silver or gold. These hands supplied my needs. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Paul chose manual labor. Tent making, the kind of work Roman elites sneered at. But he embraced it because he wasn't playing by Rome's rules. Wayne Meeks says this modeled an economy of survival and solidarity, leaders working alongside, not feeding off their people. And then Paul drops a Jesus line you won't find in the Gospels. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Rome said blessing is what you get from your patron, the gift that keeps you loyal. Paul said no, blessing is what you give away. Today, our culture says blessing is accumulation. Bigger houses, thicker portfolios, more stuff. Paul says no, blessing is found in generosity. Every food pantry, every medical debt relief campaign, every community fridge is a sermon on that verse. So let's stack it up. Josephus, Philo, Tacitus, they all admit it. Taxes crushed people. Famines exposed the system's cruelty. Horsley calls it structural oppression. Crossan says it drove peasants into banditry. Wright insists every denarius stamped with Caesar's image was a reminder. Who's your real Lord? And Acts dares to say the Spirit makes another world possible. There was not a needy person among them. That's not sentiment, that's resistance. The empire said, pay up and obey. The Spirit said, share freely and live. The question is not, was the early church generous? The question is, are we burning away greed, breaking scarcity's spell, living Christ's economy under the empire's shadow?
Come wind and fire with spirit higher, help us to